Time now for today's perspective. Well, first described in 1906 by Dr. Alois Alzhemier, the disease with his name has now been studied by doctors around the globe for decades. There is, however, still no cure, but there is a growing body of research to suggest how our lifestyles, our environments and our diets could play a role in its development, with growing links being made between blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol and brain health. As today is Alzheimer's Awareness Day, we have the good fortune of being able to speak to co-leader of the Alzheimer's and Prions diseases team at the Paris Brain Institute, Miss Marie-Claude Potier. Miss Potier, thanks for your time. Can I start by asking you to explain to us a little bit about what's actually happening in our brains if we have Alzheimer's? It is one form of dementia, but what technically is going on inside our brains?
Right, so thanks a lot. So when you start Alzheimer's disease, you have some deposits of a very specific protein in your brain. And in fact, there are two types of protein that are making deposits and perturbing the functioning of the neurons. So one is the amyloid protein and the other one is the tau protein. And you can see that people very early during the development of the disease, they form amyloid plaques in their brain. So a lot of people who are aged, they have amyloid plaques. So it's not because you have amyloid plaques that you will have Alzheimer's disease, but it is a big risk factor for developing Alzheimer's disease. And what we are really trying to do now in my team and in the Saint-Pétrier Hospital with the clinician of Professor Dubois and at Sainte-Anne with Professor Sarrazin, we are trying to study very early what is responsible for the formation of these deposits. And what we would like to do is to kind of find what are the blood biomarkers that could predict the presence of this amyloid protein in the brain of the asymptomatic subjects. So we are now working with cohort of asymptomatic subjects, elderly subjects, and what we see is that about 30% have amyloid deposit in their brain. So some of them will convert to Alzheimer's disease, some will not.
Okay.
And another...
Sorry, but that protein, is that the loss of connection then between the nerve cells in our brain? And you're saying it is a natural part of aging, but one doesn't have to be old to get Alzheimer's. So I know, as you're saying, you're studying the cholesterol in our blood and the links there of how it's maybe an overload of protein in certain people. Yeah,
you are right, but don't forget that age is the major risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. So you are talking about cholesterol. It is true that the level of cholesterol in the brain is a big risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. And you see that in Alzheimer's disease brain post-mortem, there is an increase of the level of cholesterol. But don't forget that the level of cholesterol in the brain are not really correlated with the level of cholesterol in the blood, hopefully, because otherwise that would be a problem. But we know that hypertension, high level of cholesterol in the periphery are risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. So we are also working on brain cholesterol, trying to understand what is cholesterol modifying in the brain, in the brain cells, in the neurons. And what we showed is that this increase of cholesterol also increased the formation of this amyloid pathology. So you see, there is also a connection. So we think that cholesterol in the brain is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease because it increases the formation of the amyloid peptides.
So what can we do to address this? I mean, what causes, do we have any idea of what causes the buildup of brain cholesterol?
So the cholesterol in the brain is not produced by the neurons. It is produced by the other type of cell, which is called the glial cells. And these cells are very important for the metabolism, for bringing the energy into the brain. And we think that this increase of cholesterol is due to a dysregulation of the whole cholesterol metabolism. And there are risk factors, genetic risk factors, which are connected with the cholesterol metabolism. And there are a couple of them that we are studying. And this is very important also to look at genetic risk factor in subjects with Alzheimer's disease. And we are now trying to apply this genetic risk factor and calculating like a polygenic risk score in each individual, even when they are asymptomatic, to see whether these genetic risk factors are implied in the development of the disease and not only in the disease. So
Because
this is very important.
Yeah, there's a genetic risk, and I believe it's also an environmental risk, and that leads us to be able to take steps to maybe, even if we're more vulnerable, to protect ourselves against it?
Sure. We know there are genetic risk factors. We know there is age. Age is the major risk factor. So we know that there are protective factor that we could work on, and you were talking about lifestyle. I mean, this is not my area of research, but there are many research going on lifestyle, on the environment, on the microbiome in the gut, the way the food and all these nutrition and things like that. And we know that this can really influence, although it cannot cure, but it could influence the development of disease.
Is part of the problem with Alzheimer's is like with a lot of diseases that target our brain, the brain above most of the rest of the body seems particularly individualistic.
Yes, exactly. You are right. And what we really don't understand at the moment is how the disease starts. And we know exactly how it starts for the familial cases of Alzheimer's disease because there are specific mutations in specific genes involved in the amyloid cascade. But we don't know how the etiology for the other type of Alzheimer's disease, which are sporadic. Most of them, we don't know the origin. So this is also very important to understand because we could also imagine that there are different types of Alzheimer's disease. Like you have different types of cancer. And then we could by understanding how Alzheimer's disease is diverse, then we could imagine that there would be different cures for Alzheimer's disease or prevention to the development of the disease.
Because that will be my final question, Ms. Potier. Doctors, researchers have been working on it for decades, but do you think we're anywhere close to a treatment or a cure for this disease?
You are right. I mean, there were many clinical trials. I mean, most of them were done in people with the disease, with the symptoms, more or less early, but still it's kind of difficult to understand when you see the brain of people with Alzheimer's disease. It's kind of difficult to understand how you can go back. So what is really important for the clinical trials is to detect people as early as possible, and then to try to not reverse, but to let's say play on the curve of the development of the disease. And then, if you think that this is what you need to do, then you have to detect these people, and you need to detect people who are at risk for Alzheimer's disease. So we go back to what I was saying is to find early biomarker of the disease and to try to do trial on these people.
Miss Marie-Claude Potier, we'll have to leave it there, but thanks so much for your time. It sounds like there's still quite a road to go in that research, but as you say, we're gaining information and insight every day.